This one here's for my peoples in a promised land that never planned to free you, designed to keep you curled in the feeble. Stay strong, brother, we need you. This one here's for my peoples in a promised land that never planned to free you, designed to keep you curled in the feeble. Stay strong, sister, we need you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Powaful Impact Podcast. And today we have a special guest, Dr. Randy Sconiers. I am insistent that we get our minds right in this next couple of years because I think we are due for a reset. And I am so happy that you decided to come on. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, for sure.
I think as a community, we've kind of been struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of these issues are brand new to us because we're so used to pushing them to the back and not actually dealing with life because you're too busy trying to live that to actually focus on living. But before we get really deep, I just want to know, where are you from?
I'm from Jersey, so I'm in Central Jersey. I'm like 30 minutes outside of NYC, New York City. So I'm in Central Jersey, so that's where I'm located right now.
And how did being from Jersey impact your career?
Well, I think just being from Jersey, because I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey. So I grew up in the city. And then like most cities around the country, like Jersey City is a very, it's an urban community, like it's the hood, that's where I grew up at. And my parents, when we were young, me and my sister, my parents moved us to like the suburbs of New Jersey, like a different area, because they wanted to get us out of the city. Because some of the challenges that you face in the city, growing up in the city and things like that. So that gave me like a whole nother spin of life. So I had both of these experiences where I was growing up in the city and then I moved to the suburbs, and both of those experiences sort of shaped me in terms of understanding people and understanding needs and some of the things that were going on in the city where I grew up when I was younger. Some of the resources that they had in the other areas I didn't even know existed, so it definitely was part of my shaping of who I am and who I've become, because it really let me see like what our people need. So, I always go back, even though I live still in Central Jersey, I'm always working in the cities that around the state to try to help our young people and just help our people in general with mental health and wellness and healing and all that.
You have a unique way of doing your profession. Before we get into detail about what you do, because what you do is rather special, and I think it is a great way to actually reach people, especially our people. But what was the moment? What was the moment you fell in love with hip hop?
Wow, I just love that question, man. It's such a dope question, SP. I appreciate that. I always love sharing it. So when I was young, I think that, growing up in the city, and as a young kid, you listening to music, and you feel like you hear different sounds that vibrate through the neighborhood, where you grow up at. And I remember during the holidays, like I was probably like around, I want to say like 7 or 8. And I asked my parents for a radio. So they bought me, and even prior to that, like I was going to my uncle's house, my grandmother's house, and my uncle lived there. And he used to DJ. So around this time, I'm a little kid. I was probably like I said, like around 6, 7. And he used to have vinyl. So he used to DJ, and I used to see the vinyl and look at the album covers. And I was like, what is this like music like? And sometimes while he wasn't there, shout out to my Uncle Bourne, he'll hear this. I would put the needle on the vinyl and just listen to the music. So then later on, like fast forward like a year or two later, after just trying to listen to the music, I asked my parents for a radio. So they bought me one of those big boom boxes. And as a little kid, I was just so happy that I had this radio that I sat it near my bed. And when you get that new thing, that new toy, you want to listen to it and play it. And out here in the city, there was some radio stations that's like everywhere where they play hip hop at night. So I would actually like fall asleep listening to DJ Red Alert, Marley Marl, like out radio stations that's from out here. And I just fell in love with the music because I was trying to record the music, and then I was coming home watching the videos on a show called Video Music Box, and I just like fell in love with the movies, Beat Street, all the movies, Breaking, that was out back then. So all the pillars of hip hop culture, I just fell in love with, and that was like back in, like I said, like around 7 or 8, and it just morphed in who I am today. It became part of who I am. Like I always say, it's like in my DNA, So that's really when I fell in love, like back that young. That's when I first fell in love with the music and the culture.
That's dope. I kind of had the same story.
So, Dr. S, when did you realize hip hop was something you wanted to do as a career and profession?
Wow, the more dope questions, man. Thanks, Nev, for that. It was one of those things because I like, without saying the SP, like this, it became part of my DNA. It was sort of like I fell in love with it. And, if you have this love and something that you enjoy, you foresee or start to think about the possibilities of you doing it forever. And because I used to watch the videos and I used to see the artists, and whether I was looking at a video with Eric B. and Rakim, or I was looking at, Dana Dane or Slick Rick, I was like, oh, that could be me. Like, that's probably something that I could do. So I just started, writing little things down and, getting more into the culture. And I started to think of myself as having an opportunity to do it, but maybe really not seriously until I would probably say like, now this is me, right? Like 8th grade, like I was starting to like say, you know what, I could do this, because when I moved from the city to the suburbs of Central Jersey, I connected with some young brothers that was doing the music. And, because they were doing music as well, they embraced me, and I was able to link up with them, and we formed a group, and we were just starting to say, okay, we could do this, and it became a realization that this is something that could actually happen for me. And we just started doing music, man. I was a studio rat, and making music and making songs and staying in the studio, producing, making beats, and I started to see, what, this is something I could really do. And I tell the young people I work with today, my high school, when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college right away. I always tell that story, like, because I was going to do music. So I grew up in the era where you create these demos and you go to the city and stand in front of record labels and hope somebody comes out, and you pass them your tape. And so that's where I grew up, from that era. So that was my plan after high school. Like I was doing music, and that's when I felt like I was going to do it as a career and do it forever.
How long did you like stick with that program, and how long did you go into that before it was like, all right, let me go get that 9 to 5, let me go get that degree or whatever, what's the word, not conform, but let me go with the secure plan, or the, you know what I mean, the mainstream plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a dope question, because it was like a really I was doing both like at the same time. So obviously I graduated high school and I needed to still provide for myself. I lived with my parents for a little bit, but I had moved out pretty early, so I got my own little spot. So I was always working, but I knew in the back of my mind like that hip hop was going to be that thing that was going to ultimately propel me, but I need to pay bills too at the same time. So, we were all working, like me and my boys were all working, and then boom, we would circle back. And at nighttime or on the weekends, we was like locked in, because my boy had the studio in his basement, and I was always at his crib, and all of us from the community that did music was always there. It was like the hub. So we was just there, and we was always making music, talking about marketing, talking about the business end of it. Because we were all sort of in alignment with this idea that we were going to take this to the next level. So, I always did both. Like music was, like I said, in my DNA. So it was nothing for me to work, and I was still in music mode. And then when I got out, I was still in music mode. So I always had that idea that I was going to do it full time, whenever I was doing it part time.
So, you told us about what made you fall in love with hip hop, but what song did you hear that was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do with my life?
Great question. I would say like early KRS-One, Criminal Minded, My Philosophy, Eric B. and Rakim, Eric B. for President, I Ain't No Joke. Like early, I go back. I always have a song in my head that I remember when I had the boombox, was a song by D Nice before D Nice was DJing. Well, he's always DJ D Nice, but he was doing music, and he had this song, the TR 808, and he talked about like the sound of the 808, which is really interesting now because full circle, Kanye was talking about the 808 sound recently too. So was it one song? I would probably have to say it was KRS-One, Criminal Minded, because I just thought, I was like, wow, like the culture was definitely different, and the way he spun it was just really talking about like growing up in a lot of our communities where we grow up at. And I just fell in love with this idea that hip hop could be so many different things, and so I would say KRS-One was the artist, and that song and that album was the album that really, like, I fell in love with the music, along with Eric B. and Rakim too, for sure.
Yeah, that was a dope pick.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that was it.
Sure. That was a good one. You had me playing it in my head.
You can hear the beat. You can hear the beat.
Huh?
I said you can hear the beat like in your head. Like I'm reflecting on it as I'm talking to you.
Yeah, you could. That's kind of what I missed. That was music you could feel. Even now, it's just like you just heard it. You can picture it in your head, and you can feel it in your spirit. So how does hip hop influence you when you're dealing with mental health?
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, because it's I love the saying about Karis One too. Like rap is something you do, hip hop is something you live. And because I feel like I feel like it because I live it, because it's who I am, it was a natural sort of part of my practice in terms of how I do things in the space of mental health and therapy and education. It was just like it was organic, because like whenever I was sitting down, and I specialize in working with young people, whenever I was sitting down with a young person, my natural tendency was to ask, well, who do you listen to? Like, not even like not even just like, it was almost like the assumption that they listened to hip hop, because I knew that hip hop was even before it became the #1 genre of music, I just knew like hip hop was just like permeating every sort of area of people's lives. And I knew the communities in which I was listening to. So working in. So I already knew like it was present. So I just wanted to know like what our kids were listening to so we could make that connection. Because it told me a lot about who they were, about who the artists they were listening to as well. And it was a great opportunity for us to just engage in a very organic way. Because you're sitting around, you talking, you in a session, or you're in a therapy session or a mentoring session or whatever the case may be, and you just having a conversation that naturally evolves around music and culture and community. And then it moves into mood and how it impacts you, how it makes you feel. And before you know it, you're having this very organic and intense and this powerful dialogue, with the person that you're here to empower and engage and educate and help heal. So music was just always, hip hop was just a big part of that. It was always present, when in all the work that I've done.
So how did you start Mental Hop?
Yeah, so because I had always utilized hip hop more like in an informal way through conversation and connecting and engaging, in 2017 was like it was like a transition period for me. I had been even prior to that, I would say in 2013, I left the school district position I was in for 5 years and started a program for young men called Project Empowerment. So when I started that program in 2013, I was incorporating more hip hop, intentionally into the work that I was doing. Whether I was talking about artists or highlighting a certain song and discussing it with the group. And then in 2017, I was just like, I want to formalize it. I want to create something that is formal, a program that I can actually partner and start to get into more schools. And I was thinking, what's the name of it? And I was like, well, I love to help people do this in this area of mental health, but I love hip hop. And then I just say, it's really like I want to be the bridge that brings these two spaces together. And I just formed Mental Hop. And I made sure that I wanted it to be mental health education, because I wanted to really help people understand the nuances around mental health and wellness and healing, because I felt like there was so much stigma and shame around it before. People are talking about it now, which is great. But I picked up on it years ago because there was always resistance when there was ever time to see a client or see somebody. I was always like, people didn't want to come to counseling, or they were sort of curious about what it was, or they didn't really know what it was. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make my platform about mental health education, because people fear what they don't understand. And the more understanding that you have, the walls and the resistance drops, because now you don't have to be afraid of it, because you have this knowledge and understanding around it. So that's really how Mental Hop came about. In 2017, I actually created a more formal sort of program and platform around it that I was presenting to schools and organizations, sort of like a curriculum of sort, to be able to connect with young people, and just in our community, the parents as well, around hip hop and mental health and that, that space.
So that's actually really dope.
Appreciate that.
Especially because you see the struggle. I work psych. I'm a I'm a psychiatric nurse. So
So
it always makes me feel great to see people trying to find ways to really tap in, because so many people get thrown away, and nobody should be thrown away. I think there's a way to help, or at least make life not as hard for people with mental illness, or who has learning disabilities, and the kindest thing you could do is just learn the verbiage, right?
It's language,
So,
and hip hop is such a big part of that language. So, helping people, I agree with you, SP, helping people with the vocabulary, the language, to be able just to understand a little bit more about what they may be feeling, and what they may be experiencing. That alone can help increase that awareness, that helps maybe restore hope in people, that there's an opportunity for them to recover and be restored and heal from the things that they're experiencing.
So why do you believe that the traditional forms of therapy and mental health education need to change?
Yeah, I going through formal training, obviously school, and learning about different theories and modalities and approaches to be able to help people in the area of mental health. I think this is a big part of hip hop too. Like, I've always been like, I'm a creative, so if somebody creates something, I'm going to research it. I'm going to explore it, but I'm also going to understand that, like this, like music and hip hop, it evolves. And I found out some of the things that we were doing were very, stagnant, and I get it that, formal education sort of teaches us a way of doing things. But if our world is changing and our world is evolving, but our approaches and our techniques are not, then we are always going to sort of be like behind or reaching or grasping for what could truly be effective. And a lot of the theories and modalities weren't necessarily designed or developed with the population that I work with, which is Black and brown people. So because of that, I was like, one of the things, we started this culture of hip hop that goes back to all the way back to our original roots. When you think about the music and the sounds and the healing ceremonies and the tribes. And I was like, it's such a big part of our culture. Like, we should find a way to utilize it and have it be hopefully a source of connecting people with this idea that they deserve to heal and overcome and learn and grow and be educated and be empowered. So it was really about trying to find something, honestly, SP, that works, that's effective, that actually does what it's supposed to do. And I found that hip hop, at least the most organic, authentic place of it, is connection. And that alone could be a great way to begin conversations around what mental health is and what healing looks like and what it feels like. So I just wanted to do something that could truly help our people be able to feel like they can overcome the challenges that they've been facing for so long.
And I agree with you, because I think people forget how important those drums are. They forget how important that frequency is to us. and how it makes your spirit feel when you hear that boom, bap, boom, 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 bap. You know what's coming, and you automatically start bobbing your head. It's just naturally built into us, and I think it's great that you found a way to bring it out of us and heal at the same time. So, where do you see mental health going in 3 to 5 years?
Well, so right now we already have like mental hop is in a lot of schools already here in New Jersey, and I have some dope partnerships with organizations and entities that are that have our people are already working with our people. So I'm in partnerships with schools in a lot of the communities and areas, but also in a juvenile justice program. So you're talking about young people who are incarcerated that have been through challenges for various reasons. And I just got a new partnership with juvenile probation. So I'm going to be working with kids that are on probation and talking to them with this mental health approach. So I see mental health as being like, I want mental health to be that health class, that class that you had in your school, that class that you never had, that you always wanted. You know, the class that you wanted to go to when you stepped into school. When you stepped into that classroom door, the energy would be vibrant. It would be engaging. It would be relative. It would be practical. It would be things that you could actually use and actually feel. I want that space in that class in every city in New Jersey and beyond. So that's my goal in the 3 to 5 years. I want to have at least tap into every city that's on my map here in New Jersey. Where we need it the most, that's where I'm going. I'm not doing stuff like everybody can benefit from mental health and healing, and I get that. But I'm going to where our people need it the most. That's where I'm going. And those are the spaces I want to be in. So that's the essence of social work to me. And that's what I am, like street outreach, talking to people, having community talks, community events, in dope spaces like this where people will be able to hear and hopefully get something out of it that could impact their lives in a positive way.
I hope they reach out into the South, because as a Black woman growing up in the South, it's just not a lot for us. You know, we see all these great programs and things going on. It's kind of like we're in the middle of nowhere, and I think we are an underserved community.
I'm coming, SP. Yeah, it's like I feel you. Like they need it too, for sure.
Especially in like Texas, where they change the history books and twist the truth, and unless you are diligent, you will be raising little Black kids who think that the slave trade was a cruise ship taking people to a place where they could prosper.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to connections like this right here are the ways that we build those networks that will allow mental health, powerful impact to partner and do dope things together, and that will bring us into these different spaces and places so we can impact lives everywhere. Because you're absolutely right, whether it's Texas, I'm also licensed. So I'm licensed in New Jersey, but I'm also licensed in Florida as well. So my goal is to just make these connections with people all throughout the country, and then see how we could sort of come together in the spaces where they're located, and how I can utilize, their services and the dope things that they're doing where I'm at as well. So it's definitely a need for sure.
So, how do you think that hip hop actually can help change or allow people to heal from mental health challenges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so many ways. We talked about it a little bit with just the sounds that we hear. So I'm not even talking about before. I love to use the pillars of hip hop as a great sort of great way to understand how hip hop works. Like, you have the graffiti, which is that art, that creative aspect of it, and then you have breaking or breakdancing, which is the movement. So we know creatively, like creative spaces help us heal. We know movement helps us heal. We know the MC is the story, the narrative, the language. We know when we express ourselves, that helps us heal also. And then we have the DJ who has the ability to impact the mood based on the choices of songs that they play, but also the technology in as well, because the DJ always had that turntable, that SP 1200, so to speak, where he was allowed to drop that needle on that record at a certain place in a certain time, or the sound, the thumping, the volume. So it's a way where we can take those elements, bring them together, and help people understand that we could really be intentional about utilizing hip hop in a new way. And the artists are expressing their feelings, they're sharing their stories, they're talking about their challenges, but they're also talking about their how they can persevere. They're also talking about their triumphs. And then I can help, we can have discourse, a conversation around some of the language, where that comes from, the environment. So it's all about making these connections, and ultimately people getting to a space where they find the opportunity to feel better again, or the opportunity to be restored by sharing their feelings. Maybe they don't rap, maybe they don't have 16 bars that they can drop, but can they journal? Can they understand the power of vulnerability, of just talking about your feelings could be powerful. So these are all areas that, right away, when we're dealing with maybe populations that are, you know, um, a little bit like uncertain, like there's a lot of shame and stigma around mental health and healing. Now we could say, nah, but we all listen to, this music, and we could come together and we could heal together. Like, we can do this together. You don't have to be afraid, because hip hop, is so inviting that now, it's an opportunity for people to see the connections in which the music, the narratives, the stories that they listen to is really the beginnings of healing. And then real quick, SP, one of the things I wanted to share is that a lot of times in the music, there's a lot of ruminating. Ruminating just means like you're spinning around the suffering and the turmoil that you've been through. So we could utilize hip hop to say, like, now there's another level where we're actually healing. Like, we're not surviving and just hanging on in the music, which is what we hear a lot of. Like, I got through it, like, or I'm getting through it. Now there's a whole new level that brings us back to our origins, which is greatness, royalty, kings and queens. Like, I wanted the music to help us go full circle in understanding that once we're healed, or not once we're healed, but in the process of healing, we rediscover who we are in a new way. And it's just it's a wonderful feeling that I want to help people experience.
It's kind of like the other podcast I used to do. It was just taking artists' lyrics and applying them to everyday life. Because there is so much healing you can get from Jay's verse on Renegade.
Exactly.
It's so much healing that you could get from a Dear Mama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think I'm just like Jay on Renegades. Do you listen to music or do you just skim through it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you listening to? Are you really listening to what they're saying? You know, and I think if people actually listened to what they were saying, and applied it, because they don't apply it. And people talk about Jay's album
444.
444, and I was like, y'all was complaining about he sound old, and I was taking notes
It was a class.
because he was just dropping gems.
So SP is one of the things like we really like what mental hop is also helping people understand how to listen to hip hop, like critical listening skills, critical thinking skills. Like it's an educational class. Like you really teaching people about hip hop, but not only about the culture from a broad perspective, but a very micro perspective in terms of, like you said, listening to music. How you listen to it, like you can. These are the new professors. These are the professors of modern times. These are when I talked about those theories and approaches, they are. Jay is providing an opportunity, this masterclass, so to speak, for us to be able to learn and get information through the music. And if we listen to it in a critical way, we could, and then also apply it and talk about where we can apply that in our lives, pull different gems from it. You know, that's when we can start to see some change as well.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely correct, and I love to hear this because I think our generation did a piss poor job of actually passing what hip hop is on, you know, and then we complain, well, they don't know nothing about hip hop, but what did you tell them about it?
SP, when I do these presentations, I show a picture of the current artist. So I'll show them my PowerPoints, new artists, and then I'll show a slide of our elder statesmen in the culture as well. And I have these conversations with young people about who the people who help pave the way. But even when I'm in spaces doing things with the NASW and these organizations, mainly of adults, and I ask the questions, and they tell me, well, I don't really like these new artists, and I don't like these, you know, this new music. And I say, but how did they get here? Like how did we get to this space? Like, we have to take some responsibility as well, because maybe we didn't do as great of a job in this passing of the baton, so to speak. And instead of being divisive and tearing down one another, how can we learn from each other in terms of where we are at currently?
I just want them to learn where the drums go. They slide them back in there somewhere.
Well, you know what? I was listening to a Nas song, the Bible, and I kept replaying it because he was saying, imagine Lil Uzi on a Primo beat. And I was thinking, like, I love that about Nas anyway. I love the bar, but or him on Amigos beat. And I think that's the bridge we're seeing. Like, can you catch this tone, this sound? And it's challenging, you know, and I love that idea, SP. I think we have to educate our young people what boom bap is. Like, this is powerful impact. Do you know what it's like to be on that Primo beat Do you know what it's like to be on that Pete Rock beat? Can you catch that catch that vibe? So I think there's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for that discourse and learning amongst the artists too, in the culture as well. It's all about learning and getting that knowledge and understanding at the end of the day.
Exactly. So I'm going to switch it up just a little bit
It's
because
cool.
I want you to tell everybody about your books and that you've written and the titles and the content and what you're trying to do with your books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in 2016, my doctorate journey. So I'm a doctor of social work. I'm a licensed clinical
Mm-hmm.
social worker here in New Jersey. And during my doctorate journey, as you could imagine, it could be stressful, and I had this, like, I'm a writer, right? So I'm an artist at heart. And, I sort of transitioned into this stage of using my phone to write more. So every day I was
Mm-hmm.
writing these positive messages to myself, like really doing self-talk and self-encouragement and just maybe even just reflecting on my journey and how stressful it is. It wasn't all great, good stuff. Sometimes it was less challenging times. Like I have a family, that I'm trying to take care of while I'm trying to get this, doctorate as well. And I started to put stuff in my phone and then I would share it. And I would share with people just to encourage them. And a couple of people would ask me to repost it or if they could post it. And then before I knew it, somebody said, man, you should make this a book. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I said, maybe I could, and I had everything in my phone. So honestly, all I did was take these ways of encouraging people and transform it into my first book. And I used to always write them in the morning. So hence, that's my first book. It's called Good Mornings. I'll show you there. You got the little alarm clock. It's called Good Mornings, Wake Up Calls for Life. Because when I used to write, that was my wake-up call. Like that was my way of like talking about gratitude, talking about encouraging myself, talking about persevering, being able to be at one with the feelings I was feeling, and just wanting the people to know like the morning time is a great opportunity to set the tone for the day. It doesn't have to be the only time where you read my books, but it's a great way to sort of get your mindset in the space of where you want to be ultimately throughout the day. So that was the first book, and then in the midst of 2020, and everything was going on from the racism, the civil unrest, or the discrimination, the marches, and I just felt like, and I was marching too. I was bringing my kids with me, and we was out in the streets, and I was just like, I want to give people something to encourage them, because at the same time, obviously the pandemic hit and it was just a tough time. And I was like, I want to just inject some good energy, so that's why I came with the second book, was called Good Vibes with Dr. S. Like, it's just a passage of like positive stories on self-care and, Black self-care at that. Like I was talking about, purpose and your dreams, and I talked about relationships and healing, and I just want people to know that they can get through these difficult, challenging times that we're facing. And I was talking about solidarity and how we need to stick together. And so my books are just easy reads, because it was also another way to introduce people to this space of mental health and wellness, because it's very practical. It's like the language is I removed all the clinical jargon and all the stuff that I know I wouldn't want to read. I tried to give people something that they could just embrace. So whenever people say, well, how do I introduce somebody that doesn't want to go to therapy or never been to therapy? How can I do it? My first thing I say is, you can start with the book, and you guys can read passages together. You can form small book groups. They're easy passages. I'm serious. Like, there's like, imagine what you would write in your phone, like in the note section. I just transformed that. It has a lot of white space, so places for people to write. It has a couple of questions, reflection statements. So it's very just an easy read on both fronts. So, it's really just being able to introduce people to just this world of being able to feel better at the end of the day.
I'm actually taking notes. That's why you see me keep looking down.
It's all good.
Because I'm writing down.
It's all good. Yeah.
I'm writing down. I'm writing down what you're saying. Got my notebook.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we trying to get people, we trying to get that, ignite something within people. And the books is the book is a easy way to sort of do it. And I love when people could do it together. I've had parents buy books for their older kids. I've had partners buy stuff for their spouses.
Mm-hmm.
And they read it together, or they share the messages with each other, and it's been part of book clubs and things like that. So it's been really great, the response that I've been getting. It's available, both are available on Amazon as well for people to pick up and get.
And I will attach them to the description. So I'll even make it easy for you. You just click the link and then go buy it.
Easy. And also the pricing, that's the thing too. I'm talking, $10, $12 for a book that to me, and I wanted that price point to be that way because I did not want there to be, I wanted to try to remove the obstacles a lot of times that sort of get in the way, or that could lead to excuses that we sometimes make for why we can't do certain things. So I wanted to support people in that way as well.
So I want to talk about your hip hop career in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about so much. I'm running all into myself.
It's all good.
Let's talk about your hip hop career in the 90s first.
Yeah, like that was a wonderful time for not just me, but just like my comrades, my brothers as well. We was this heavy studio rats. Like we was in the basement. If you could imagine what an underground basement would be, where you walk in and there's always somebody on the ASR 10, which is the keyboard that we use, banging out a drum pattern, or we were vinyl rats too. So we would travel in different places and just buying vinyl, and somebody would be like listening to a sample or stripping something or taking something. So I was an MC that sort of came into production as well, because we all had these creative spaces. We all different MCs. We all had different styles. So we had different sounds that we like. I was more of like the melodic sort of sounds. That's what I was into. So I was always like drum patterns and looking for samples and things like that. So we came together, we formed this group called Third Degree. And it's funny, before I was coming, it was like I was getting in the mindset of boom bap. I was listening to a single that we put out in 1998. We put out one single that we pressed up by ourselves that had A side and a B side. A side was called Nobody's Business, and the B side was called Travel Through the Darkness. So it was a 3-man group. We all produced, we all did music. We were sort of like, if you could imagine, like a mix of like the Beat Nuts mixed with like Tribe mixed with Mobb Deep. It was like we were doing like all these different like ways of being the 3-man producers, but the 3-man MCs, the 3 MCs as well. And we put out this single, and I was just listening to it coming in, and it got so much great response back then, but I didn't realize the response that it got because YouTube wasn't around then. And I go on YouTube now. I went on YouTube today, and the single had like 40,000 views and like 35 comments. Like, how can I get this? Like, where's this at? And I'm reading it, and I'm like, we put this out in 1998. This is our group. This is my lyrics. and people are still sort of feeling it today. And it was just so, and me and my boy, we have conversations about re-releasing the single, or we have some material that we thinking about putting out again maybe next year. That is like, people were like, did y'all put out an album? And we actually did. We have an album. We put out an album. we put an album out that was sort of like only in the hands of a selective few people, but we still have the CD. So we're thinking about like, why don't we put it back out, but like on a, on iTunes, or one of the independent routes, and give it to the people, and reintroduce us, because we still all love music. All our conversations around music. So we're thinking about that for 2022. So stay tuned. There might be some things in the works.
So that was nobody's business. And what was the other one?
Nobody's Business and Travel Through the Darkness. All you got to do is go on YouTube and type in Third Degree. It's a red label. You'll see a big 3 and a RD. And it's people that have been trying to get the vinyl we put out. Because remember, we were in 1998. We were still young. We didn't even know. We pressed up maybe 300 copies out of our own pockets. And I guess whoever got it, Stretch and Bobito played it one time. A couple of underground local radio stations, like college stations, would play a couple of the songs, play the single. And then like me and my boy, we on YouTube, just let's Google this, let's YouTube, see if anybody got it. And all of a sudden people are like, I'm looking for that. And I paid somebody paid like $200 for the single, the vinyl. I'm like, and somebody, the first comment in the channel that has 40,000 views, they were like, we're listening to this in Poland. I was like, what? And me and my boy always talk about like, we should have pressed it more, but like we should have really pushed it more, because we had no idea. We knew it was dope, but you never really know until people overseas start rocking to you, because it was boom bap. Like y'all are hear the single, and y'all will say like, this is classic sort of 90s drum sounds, beats, lyrics, subject matter, for sure.
But I found that that most European countries are really traditional hip hop.
Yeah, they like the essence of it, and it's so dope to see artists from that 90s era be able to travel overseas and still be able to represent the culture, but also be able to provide for themselves. Like they go overseas and make money, because people will pay to come out and see a Smith and Wesson show, right? They want to see Buck Wild, or they want to see somebody perform that they heard about in the States. Master Ace, Cool G Rap, all these artists that can still channel live, but they
won't come to Texas.
They can see it live, and it's so dope that they respect it to that level.
I'm gonna get somebody to come to Texas. They won't come.
We gotta get somebody like we're from Jersey, so we were rocking out with like the Lords of the Underground, the Artifacts, we had obviously Naughty by Nature, Tretch. Those are all like we had our little representation in Jersey hip hop. What the album? You asked me one of my favorite albums. I remember driving. I had like a little hatchback, and I was listening to What the Album. So I turned it up so hard that because it was like, what is this man doing? Like in terms of the skits and the sounds, and Eric Sermon, what he was doing, orchestrating. It was just such a beautiful time in music for me, so that whole 90s era for me was like the stamp. Like I fell deeper in love with the music in that era for sure.
We definitely gonna put that vinyl out. Please, we gotta get that vinyl. We gotta get them CDs out officially. Now that Bandcamp is around, it's really no excuse.
That's what we was talking about. We was like, there's no reason not to put it out. And I'm telling you, I'm not. It's a humble brag. The music on it is incredible. Like it's like we were in the zone with that album. I want to say it's like 14 songs of just like gems, like from everything was so planned out in terms of the sounds and the samples and the lyrics and like the subject matter and the I can't wait for people to hear it. So
I'm gonna find that for y'all too and put it in the description.
Listen, that didn't even come out. I'm giving them like a little, they could get an intro. What's the
Easter egg?
Yeah, like you're gonna have to search for that. But when it drops, it's and we don't have to. It sounds amazing, CD quality. So it's ready to go. And I think it's nothing wrong with a little crackle and pop. And you hear that sound that just like takes you back to like that feeling. And
you heard it here first on Powaful
Exclusive.
Impact. 2022 summer. It comes out on CD, vinyl, cassette.
I'm gonna give respect to Powaful Impact because I was listening to the single on the way here. I'm in my office recording this right now, and I'm in a car, and I'm like, I'm going to do Powaful Impact. I'm in that vibe. I'm in that space. Let me listen to my own stuff from the 1998 era. Turned it up loud in the car. Listen to the kicks, the drums, the sounds. Like it was. So y'all are the inspiration behind it. So I'm calling my boy tomorrow. I'm like, it's gonna happen. We gotta put this together. And y'all gonna hear it here first. You gotta bring me back. We gotta do something here.
Of course. And any release that you do next, you gotta put it together like a bundle, man. That's what this show's about. Powaful Impact, here to inspire, motivate, elevate.
That's what's up, man. Appreciate it. Much love for sure.
So you are a super busy man. So let's talk about your podcast.
Yeah, I'm busy, but I'm busy like very things I love and things I enjoy. Yeah, like so the podcast, I wanted to just again being a creative, I wanted to get into different spaces and being behind the mic is something that I just grew up doing it, and the podcast space was something that allowed me to show another level of my creativity. So from everything from recording the episodes to thinking about the subject matter in the frequency in which I want to drop episodes and all those things. The Mental Hop podcast is available on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google. They could get it there, and it's literally Mental Hop, with Dr. S. And it's not all about hip hop. It's all about because I am hip hop, I always take it like any space that I'm in, hip hop is going to be present. Because as long as I'm there, you going to feel hip hop when I speak on, seasonal affective disorder, which is sad, which a lot of people are experiencing now due to the lack of sunlight and our mood changing. So I'm really taking mental health and wellness ideas and nuances and making them very practical and understandable. So I'm talking about purpose. I'm talking about healing. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about narcissistic behaviors like gaslighting and things of that nature, things that our people know exist, but we don't put the language to it, or maybe we just never heard that this is actually a condition or this is a diagnosis. And I'm really just bringing it into like that audio form, like so people could put it in or listen to it on their drive or while they're driving. So again, just like the books, it's just another way to bring people in to this idea that they deserve to heal, and you can do it in different ways. And maybe the podcast can be the beginnings of that for people as well.
SP, you're muted.
Oh, I said that's dope. Okay, I just took a little break real quick. Hold on. I'll be right with you.
It's all good.
I'm sorry.
You want me to ask a question and keep going?
Yeah, you can, but okay. This is taking too long. Hold on.
I wonder if I should. Yeah, I can just talk. I guess we can keep flowing, and then I guess you can edit it. So let's talk about your merchandise being sold on your website and social media platforms. Like, what's available there? You showed us the books, but what else is available there? Because I've definitely checked it out, and I've seen a lot of goodies. And the holidays are coming up, so let the people know what they can get.
Yeah, is again just one of those spaces, man, where I was just not trying. I was just like, I'm gonna get this message of hip hop, mental health, healing out there to the people. And again, what other better way to do it than some t-shirts, some hoodies, some hats? So mentalhop.com, that's the website. Mentalhop.com. You click on the website. I got stuff on resilience. I got caps that say empathy on it because I wanted to introduce people to this idea of what empathy was and what empathy means. And, like maybe you saw the cap and you didn't really know what the word meant. So you like Googled it or you researched it, and it meant like being able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else and being able to, connect and be compassionate towards somebody else. So, it was really about, and I also had something that was called, I had some hoodies that was wealthy in love, because there was always this talk on social media. It was big on like trying to get to the bag. So I was like showing this bag that was traditionally a bag of money, but it had a heart in the middle of it, or it had a peace sign in the middle of it. So it was like, I'm wealthy in love, man. I'm wealthy in peace. Like I might not have, like $1 million in the bank, but I'm a solid individual. I'm a person that emits love to one another. That's just as valuable as having $1 million. I'm at peace with who I am. More valuable. And because I'm at peace and I'm admitting that and I'm releasing that, then somebody else that is in a state of a storm might be able to pick up on that peace just from reading my shirt or reading my hoodie or seeing my cap. So it was just another way for me, again, to be able to say to people, we can really embrace this. We don't have to be afraid anymore of healing, of mental health. Like we pulling back the curtains now and saying like we're bringing things that used to be hidden from us, that we weren't allowed to share our feelings and share our emotions, or we were punished if we talked out of place, so to speak. Not anymore. Now we're saying, you know what? We're embracing this idea that there's more for us. We don't have to be in survival mode. Like we could go from surviving to thriving. And one of the ways we could do that is being able to be more educated, more aware of what that looks like and what that feels like. And if clothing helps ignite that for our people, then I'm all for it. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I want to change gears for a quick second here.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why now is because it's something I was thinking about, and I love what you said about the wealth inside. I'm happy you said that earlier. I'm really like fulfilled from what I'm doing, but that definitely takes like a piece of coal, right? Going through the fiery furnace, becoming a diamond, and then shining. Woo! I got bars. What do you say to like black men or people of color in general that are moving up the social ladder, getting education, moving into professional spaces? We have all these terms now, right? Microaggressions, X, Y, and Z, systemic racism, this and that. And you said, I was stressed out while I was going to get my PhD. What advice do you give people who are riding or going this lonely path, the road less traveled? I mean, even you being Dr. S, you're a percentage of a percentage of a percent. You know that, 1% of a 1% of a what? A percent of a percent of a percent.
Facts.
So, and they use the word, they these nice colorful words, the unicorn, right? The outlier. What is the advice, or I guess that's it. That's simple enough. What's the advice you would give to people traveling that road to get to where you are now? You know what I mean? In any profession, doesn't have to be your profession. Just in general, those people that are attorneys, engineers, like you said before, blacks in tech. Just what would be the breadcrumbs or blueprint you would give to that person thinking about going to school, or working in a place and like, man, I'm underappreciated, overworked, undervalued, X, Y, and Z. That was a long question, son.
Nah, it's dope. Like multiple things come to mind. I mean, I did my dissertation at the time when I was deciding what I wanted to do my dissertation on. And the dissertation is a research study that you do when you're getting your doctorate. And when I was deciding what I wanted to do, I could have did anything in regards to working in our communities. I was talking about chronic community violence. I was talking about the educational system, educational reform. I was talking about mental health for our youth and our young people. I was talking about even educational in terms of attendance issues or parenting. And the thing I decided to do my dissertation on was self-care. I did my dissertation on self-care to mitigate burnout. So all those other things I was studying, I decided to do this because I was coming into contact with people who were already burnt out before they had walked or got into whatever professional field of study or career place that they aspired to get to. They were already tapped out because there were so many pressures and expectations and trying to move up the ladder here or trying to hold down the family here. And one of the things I would say right away is self-care is paramount, no matter what industry or field that you're in. We do not talk about self-care. We do not talk about it in our schools. We do not even learn about it until later on. At that point, we're already we're in a reactive position. Self-care is a proactive approach, which means it's really like a lifestyle change in the mindset in which you travel and you journey. So self-care, number one. Number two is don't lose yourself in the midst of all this. What happens is, like, I think we get so caught up in the ideals of what we're trying to become that we lose who we are. If you lose who you are, you're always going to be chasing, trying to see what's next, because you're losing sight of who you are inside, internally. So, and I mean this in the most respectful way. None of this matters if you lose yourself, because then you're attaching yourself to an ideal that somebody else created, or you're burning yourself out to try to accomplish something, but losing yourself in the meantime. So, that's what I would definitely say. Like, make sure you don't lose yourself and remember your why. Like, remember why you wanted to do that thing. Remember the love that you had when you first said, I want to do this. So full circle is a beautiful thing because I started with hip hop. Then I went into mental health. Then I'm back in hip hop. That thing that you love will always be present as long as you remember that that's the reason you begin. That's the why. So that's what I would say to people. Like, start to understand that is keep that love. And my boys, my brother, who's part of the third degree, but he's not in the field of mental health. He's in a different field. Every time I could call him right now, and if he got music playing, I guarantee he's listening to Gangstar, Beat Nuts. Like, we're in our 40s. Like, at any point in time, he got Tribe on. Like, the love he has for that era is where he's at. And I love that about him. because I'll tell him, like, I listen to everything. He knows that about me. Like, I throw on NBA YoungBoy because I work with young people. So I'm tuning in, trying to see, okay, let's see. I'm trying to, because I hear trauma, I hear narratives, I hear stories every day. So, it's just one of those things, like, keep the love close. Like, find that love again. Don't lose that love. If you lost it, find that again. Don't forget your why and practice from a place of self-care. Move from a place of self-care. And that should help you on this journey for sure.
All right. I'm going to ask, just kind of continuing on that, what's some advice you would give to someone wanting to get into the profession of being a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And I get this question a lot, like on social media and, even from students that want to go into this space. I would definitely say, I would start with those questions. Why do you want to do it? Right. So what is the reason? Tell me about the why. And most of the time, which I love, people sometimes they'll just say, I want to help. Like I see an issue, I see a challenge, or I've experienced something in my life and I've overcame that. And I want to be able to help empower somebody else that may be going through that. So I always say it's just like hip hop. Like I might start with a bass line. I might start with a drum. I start with the foundation. What do you want to build from this? And that can evolve. So, and once I get that, I would just say encourage people to begin in just helping, because a lot of times this work is like, most of the people that do it, I feel like it's who they are. It's their helpers. They want to give back. Even if they didn't have a title, they want to help people. So I would say originally I started doing like mentoring. Before I was a therapist or counselor, I was a mentor. I wanted to find the opportunity for me to help others, help young people. So I was like that big brother that would I was taking kids to basketball courts, taking them to the mall. I was just having conversation and dialogue, trying to help them see how life is. And then from there, I would say, I'm a social worker. So I would say, look at different professions. There's different ways that you can help as well. And we need people in all spaces, whether it's a social worker like me, whether it's a psychologist, whether it's a psychiatrist who's actually a doctor. Some people they may not understand the differences between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. One prescribes medicine. The psychiatrist prescribes meds. Psychologists can prescribe meds. So I think just doing research and seeing that there's different helping professionals and change agents available. And then once you do that, look at different programs, different certificates that you could get. What type of education do you need in order to do the work that you want? Because so many people will hit me, Nev, and they'll be like, I want to get my doctorate. Like, I want to become a doctor. And my first question, and I'm not discouraging, my first question is, do you have to pay for it? Because it's expensive. Like, it costs money. And a lot of things people can do, they might not even need
a house.
They might not
easily.
They don't need the title to do the things that they tell me they want to do. So I'm not discouraging. I'm being, as a person who went that route, I'm telling you, there may be other routes that you could take that could get you to that end result that you're trying to get to. So please do your research as well. And most importantly, be authentic. Do it from the heart. Like, don't like ulterior motives and titles. All those things sound good, but don't lead with that. You have to lead from a place of authenticity, or your work is going to reflect that, or your lack of work will reflect that, because people won't rock with you the same, or you won't make an impact, powerful impact, boom, from the cannon. You won't make the impact unless you do it from a place of authenticity, in terms of the impact you really want to make, especially in this space that we're in.
Facts, man. And I love that how you said basically you were the mentor, counselor. Were there any books, any courses, anything else other than hands-on experience that pushed you in that way? Because I feel for me, like
Mhm.
the generic term is always, I didn't choose it, it chose me. But in a way, that's how it happened. It happened
Yeah,
from this
yeah.
job to that job to that job. And at that time, you could get in many more doors with the bachelor's. Now that is narrowing. It's taking the license to get it. Not even the master's, it's taking the license to get your
Mhm,
footing into certain places now. So
mhm.
you can't even really experiment and get the flavor or the taste for something until you get to a certain level. Where when we came in, you could kind of, what is it, be blindfolded and find your way through the forest. So I
Uh-huh.
don't know. I just wanted to ask that. Is there anything that you could recommend, or did it happen the same way like me? Just pin the
Yeah,
tail on a donkey. Boom,
honest,
you're it.
honestly, what happened was I was like meant like I kind of like fell into it to a degree because I was always a helper. I was always a helper. I wanted to help people. And then when I got the opportunity to be like that big brother, that mentor, I fell in love with this idea of being. That's why I specialize in working with young people, because I fell in love with this idea of being able to help a young person who was in a situation a lot of times that maybe they didn't even sign up for, because it might have been something that their parents were doing, or that the community, things that were going on in the community. So, for me, it was sort of like that organic, approach, because honestly, I didn't read a lot of psychology books and things like that. I was reading stuff on like, wealth building and entrepreneurship. And, I was looking at trying to help my community in the way, because I only looked at that time as what I knew was like economically, I wanted to build something that people could sort of have and that they could go to. So those are kind of
And
things I was,
financial literacy.
yeah, that's how kind of, but it was still in that helping space because that's where my heart was at. But then when I realized that language and exchange and sharing of feelings and listening, sometimes it would just be in a car listening to a young person talk and how they would feel after just having someone that would just listen to them, let me know that that was wealthy, that was valuable, that was that like you said, the coal that moved into that state of the diamond just from allowing that sort of transfer to occur. So I would say like there's so much material out there, but I loved actually doing the work because I just think sometimes you could get caught up in like that's somebody else's story and it does have value, but you also have a story and there's something about you that you could bring into that space that no one else can do. And that's how we get people who are really moving from a place of this very, you know, a very organic, and this is who I am into this world. Because there's it's like music, man. Like it's hip hop. Like it's so many different, it's like a cheesecake factory menu. Like there's so many items and things that you could do, and you could do it in your own way, and you could be creative. And I'm mixing hip hop and mental health. Whoever knew? Like I didn't even know. I didn't hear about anybody doing it the way I'm doing it before I started doing it. And that's like I got that from hip hop, like take chances, take risk, try something. It might not work. I did so many, as Nev, like, in SP, I'm sure you do too. Like I'm in the studio experimenting with sounds. I would do whole songs and just trash them. Like I never put them out. Like I'll create a whole beat that took me 3 hours and then I'll just click off the machine and don't save it. Like it's really about trying to find, that groove and that thing that like feels good to you, so you can present it to the people, so you can help others. And that's the bridge again between this mental health and this hip hop thing called mental hop for me. It's really like they go hand in hand in terms of how my mind operates.
Yeah, that's what's up. So let me go here now. This is that movie. What's that movie? Tenet with Denzel Washington's son. So when the people are checking this out now, we're gonna be in 2022. We're not
Mm-hmm.
there right now, but this will
Mm-hmm.
be 2022, and it'll be Health Month. But this month that we're in currently, which is the end of the movie at the beginning of the movie, this month is Men's Mental Health Month.
Mm-hmm.
So statistics have shown that African American males in particular have had a spike in suicide rates, and the rate of suicide has actually doubled within the last year of the pandemic. What factors, Dr. S, do you think have contributed to this spike and increase in suicide rates, particularly among Black men in America?
Wow, that's an excellent question, man. I have been doing some things lately on trauma and doing these presentations and talks on trauma. And I've been doing it on this idea of little t, which are the traumas, the daily things that we experience and go through on a regular basis. Pockets is on E, infidelity, cheating, stress, continuous, like really strong, stressful situations, internal conflicts and stresses that we have. And then this big T, which is like, living in a pandemic, the robberies, the crimes, living in certain areas. And obviously you got car accidents and even death, like seeing someone pass away. So we got this big T and this little T. And I'm talking about for Black men. We don't talk about the trauma that we often experience on a day-to-day basis because we never labeled it as trauma. We never saw it as trauma. We saw it as just things we go through. Like we just got to push through it. And what happens is we suppress because we are experiencing something that we don't talk about, that we don't know, we don't put a name on it. We can't even identify if it's something that really is problematic, then we just keep pushing along. And remember, Black men, we got this thing where, we got to keep it moving, or this resilience that's sort of been pressed on us, just be strong, So because of that, sometimes you can have this resilience that actually hurts you because you're trying to go and do it on your own, and it's heavy. And that heaviness over time, because you don't release it, you don't talk about it, it starts to weigh you down. And because it weighs you down, it turns into this heaviness, turns into depression and sadness, again, that you never talk about. And because you never talk about it, you hold it in within and it festers. And what you're trying to do, you want to escape that so bad that you may move into this, not into this idea of like committing suicide, but this death by suicide, because I want to alleviate the pain, the hurt, the trauma, the things that I'm going through on a regular basis that nobody knows, the wars I'm battling that I don't talk about because I never had a safe space to talk about it, because back in historically, Black men weren't allowed to even talk about their feelings. And if we did, we were punished. If we got punished, everybody around us would get punished. Can you imagine back in the day, historically, you stepping out of line and saying, I'm angry about this, or I hate this, or I don't want to do this, or I'm sad? You would be punished and abused. And not only you, your family that you were providing for will also be punished. So what do? We don't say nothing. Just keep hammering it away, keep being strong. So unfortunately, what happens is, especially during these times, the pandemic, financial reasons is a major issue. And we call that little t. That's that trauma that people don't talk about. When your pockets is on E and you don't have a means to support your family because your job, released you, or, COVID hit and you don't have a place to work, those are all things that start to build up over time. And our men need to know that there are other options for them, and they need safe spaces to be able just to release the things that they're experiencing on a daily basis.
I do have a question for you, Dr. S, and if that's fine for me, call you Dr. S, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here because I think one of the challenges we have as Black men is that we don't feel that we have a safe place where we can express some of the struggles we have, because throughout history, you were considered weak if you showed emotions. I mean, you have a father in the house and he wouldn't even tell his son that he loved him because that was a sign of weakness. And now, because the new generation we're in now, I have a son, he's only about 10 years old. And so I feel the need to tell him that because I didn't get that. I didn't have my father in my household. I grew up among women. That was my environment. That's what taught me, and that's what shaped me as a man. You know what I'm saying? My understanding of manhood was either based on what I saw on TV or what I thought a man should be. And so my goal and one of my challenges is to break that cycle and be in my son's life no matter what goes on, so he can understand what a man is. So my question is this, is that you mentioned how we have we're seeing an increase, and now thank you for that question. We're seeing an increase as far as suicidal rates among, and correct me if I'm wrong, among men or just in Black culture as a whole. What is your advice? Let's say right now we have a man that's struggling right now. He's suicidal. He's depressed. Now we're dealing with COVID and we're dealing with so many things. We feel like, I don't want to live no more. I want to give up. What kind of information or what type of insight would you provide for him to talk him off of the ledge? What would you share in this instance? If you don't mind doing that.
Of course. I think the first thing that we always do is an assessment. So I want to assess the risk of suicide, right? So obviously, if there's something immediate, this person is a danger to themselves because they have a plan of action, then immediately we want to get them stabilized and safe. And I always tell people that if you feel like you're at a point in which you have a plan, then I want you to go to the nearest emergency room just like you would, or there's helplines, suicide hotlines in which you can call. And what they do is try to support you, and you want to bring down that risk level. So you're trying to get that person that might be at a level 10 because they have a plan of action. You're trying to get them to bring that down so we could get them in a position to be able to receive help. That's what happens when you go to a hospital. And a lot of times we don't even think that we can go to a hospital. And I break it down that easy. Just as you would go to a hospital for a broken leg. If you're at a point where you feel like the only other option is to take your life, I want you to drive to the emergency room and tell them, and you can whisper it to them. You can say, I don't feel like myself. I feel like this. I don't have any option. I got to get out of here. That kind of language signifies that you're at a place that they need to get you that treatment immediately. Sometimes we try to get friends to talk to them, and when they're at that state, that's not what they need. They really need that immediate help because they need a trained professional that's going to be able to help them. Now, there's another risk level where there's somebody who has suicidal thoughts. They don't have a plan, but it comes in and out like waves. They think about it sometimes. For those individuals, for both individuals, we need that support system. We need people that can encourage us, and then we need people that can actually walk us to professional help that we need. Counselors, therapists, somebody that can help us. Again, we're trying to bring down that risk level, and that can take time. And that alone is hard, as you can imagine. So just to be able to get somebody to feel safe enough to be able to say to you that they feel that way. So that's often why we miss it, because we don't give people the environment in which they feel like the trust, in which they feel that they could tell you something that's so intimate and vulnerable, and you won't utilize it in the way that judges them or stigmatizes them, so they can feel comfortable to tell us, because often we don't find out. You'll see parents don't know, family members, they say, well, we could tell something was up, but he never said anything. They're not going to say anything. It's not, unless the space is safe enough to be able to do that. So that's what I would say, and just a really short, easy way to understand it. Just if you're at that point, I want you to get that help, professional help, immediately. And there's hotlines and places that you can. Most states have a suicide helpline. There's a national suicide helpline that people can call and get some support immediately.
Thank you for sharing that.
Dr. S, man, that was perfect. And just one more thing, just to piggyback on what you're saying. Great setup. The alley-oop. Also, you people, you want to know whether it's people around them. You want to know if they have a time frame. Do they have a plan of action? Like, I'm doing this tomorrow. A week from now, I'm thinking of it. Or what means are they going to do that? What way are they telling you to? Hanging, whatever. There's even passive ways of doing it. I'm going to make a police officer harm me or shoot me or whatever. So it's just like that too. Time frame and means. Just those are other things.
Can I add on to that, Nev?
Yeah, man.
Add on to that. The reason why Nev is sharing that is because we want to be able to monitor and help remove things that might be potential. We always do the assessments. Are there any weapons in the home? Is there, if they say like, they're going to pick up a gun, we want to try to remove those things that could potentially be harmful to them, especially when they're in that place. And that's why a lot of times we need to get them out of that environment. And nobody really wants to go to a hospital for any reason, even if it's physical health related. But part of the reason is you need that professional training, but also you might need an environment that's conducive to you beginning to heal and beginning to feel better again. And that's getting away from whatever that is, the root causes of it. And it might be environmental, but it also could be internal as well. So those are things that could get sorted out in those spaces as well.
The other added layer that's so sad now is the pandemic, right? Who wants to go to the hospital? And I think that becomes now another obstacle as well. So I have to watch the triggers, but damn, now I got to go into the hospital because I know me, I'm not suicidal here, but I know I'm agoraphobic. I don't want to be around too many people. So if I'm going through that type of thought, now it's like now I have to put myself at another set of risk, another set of trauma that would trigger me, and I think that's another piece of it too, and that isolated feeling of like, okay, I know what I could do, but I'm afraid to even do that. So that's another piece.
Yeah, it's such a barrier right now. It's been hard, and that's why we see this increase, and that's why that support system is so important. Like, we need to check on each other, and as men and as Black men, we gotta have, how you ask the question to your boy, you're like, how's everything going? They say, I'm okay. You get that, I'm okay. It's all good. Nah,
I'm good.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I'm good.
It's the next question. It's the second question. It's the third question. The follow-up to that we have to get comfortable asking each other, that we have to get comfortable with receiving from our boys too, because sometimes your boy asks you a follow-up and you look at him like, what's going on with you?
Why are you in my business?
Yeah, like because we've been conditioned to do the exact opposite, to be angry with each other, to be questioning if our boy is asking us something that evokes some level of vulnerability or something that contradicts this idea that masculinity means, or to be a man means to be strong 24/7. There's emotional strength, there's emotional vulnerability, and that's what we're trying to with mental hop is really like reframing and changing the narrative with our men and saying, no, you deserve to heal too, brother. Like, you deserve to have a space where you can share openly what you're going through, and I'm here to listen. Not necessarily always to give advice. Maybe I'm just here to give you that safe landing spot where you can just share, and I'll be present. And that's sometimes all our men need sometimes as well.
I'm fortunate. And one thing I'm grateful about Powaful Impact, that we're not tied into one voice. Like, we have a person that's a doctor on the line that can speak to mental health, because it's one thing to dance to the music, but you can still go home depressed. And so we need to deal with every aspect of the man or the human being. So again, I want to gratefully say again, I'm glad that you're here tonight. I do have a question, because when you look at hip hop as a whole, and I want you to speak to the mental aspect of it, because you're seeing where there are hip hop artists that are dying prematurely, and most of it, and I hate to say it, is drug related, or they may have some other situation that's going on behind the scenes that we're unwilling to talk about because it's like a taboo type of thing. What can we do to, and you kind of spoke about it a little bit more, but you have like different people, and I don't want to name them. I'll let you if you need to do that. What can we do to kind of preserve our hip hop legends, or people that are in that state of mind? And I know you kind of spoke to it, but you know, that's fighting against drugs, because obviously there's something going on internally that we're not talking about. What can we do to help these people if they're in our circle, or the what is his name? The guy from Digital Underground, forgive me. You know, we found that it was Shock G. You know, we and I don't want to, again, I don't want to pinpoint nobody and say they had a problem, but you know, we heard about DMX and so many different others. What can we do as a community to reach out to these people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we are seeing it, and it would be almost, it wouldn't be right for us not to explore what is going on with our artists, because we're losing so many of them that are super talented and some of them so young. So one of the things I talked about before was this idea of ruminating, and this happens in music a lot, where you sort of like use music as an escape, and in that escape, in listening to the music or doing the music, you're talking about maybe if you drink or you smoke. So there's a level of self-medicating that might be going on, more than likely is going on. A lot of people don't even realize that they are self-medicating, just think I'm smoking because I like to smoke, or I drink because I like to drink. But sometimes what's happening is, because of our experiences, because of our environment, we pick up a habit that actually lets us or helps us feel better, or calms us and settles us. So we think, so we become addicted. We see addiction take place, and then we start talking about it, because that's what we do. We rap about it. The problem is, with ruminating, it's a cycle. So in hip hop, we hear a lot of that part of it, but we never really hear about the part where you pull yourself out of the cycle. And I think that's the part we have to get into. It's not enough to talk about our suffering all the time and not talk about our healing. So we have to introduce to people that we love and that we care about that, yes, you are in a tough time. You've been through some difficult things. You had some traumatic experiences. You grew up without a dad. You grew up without a mom. You grew up in this very violent community. You grew up not having certain things. That's the suffering. But let me introduce you to this idea of healing. You deserve, in spite of the things that you've been through, you deserve, there's more available for you. In order to get to that place of thriving from surviving or getting by, we now have to get to the root cause of what has happened to you. We now have to talk about it, and we have to open up about it. And once we start to open up about it, we can start to fill those voids with meaningful things, instead of filling those voids with drugs, alcohol, sex, all the things that we hear in the music, what a lot of people complain about and that they don't like, is because often we get stuck in that cycle of ruminating about that, and we don't know how to pull ourselves out of it.
Thank you.
Well, since you said that, this has been an ongoing battle for years. When we were growing up, and in the 80s, and hip hop was actually taking its hold, the parents were upset, and they were protesting, and they were because of the language. And as it rolled into the 90s, they got it went into the misogyny and the gangs and the violence, but it was a healthy balance, because we still had the Talibs, and we still had the Commons, and we had, it was a nice balance. But now we have just anywhere you go, it's bling. Who can I have sex with? Where am I gonna snort it off of her at? It's just violence and misogyny and rape and drug use and drug users and drug selling and materialism. And do you think that this constant feeding of that kind of music has contributed to the different things that are going on now in the world, especially in our communities, and with this seems to be this ongoing battle between Black men and Black women?
Yeah, I do, because remember at the beginnings, the essence of hip hop, the authentic state or beginning of it was about expressing the issues within our community, the things that we were experiencing. We were talking about it, we were sharing it. It helped us sort of make sense of what was truly going on. And that was drugs, sex, alcohol, crack, things that were happening in our community, which we know that has been, whether people want to debate it or not, strategically designed to keep us in a state of stagnation, of being in a place where we feel less than. So as the music evolved, what happened is the powers that be weaponized it. What they do is, what has happened is if you come from a place where economics is a challenge, and you've been taught that if you have more money, you're better off, then I can sell you the idea that if you do this music, I can pay you to do this music more. So now we drown out the Commons, the Talibs, the the artists, the Dead Prez, like the artists that were talking and giving us this conscious music, this uplifting music. We can drown that out because monetarily we can offer you this. If you make this kind of music, we can up the ante. So now you put a person in a tough spot. You put a person in a situation, an artist in a situation in which their community or their family is in need of money. And now I'm supposed to choose this over that. And what we're seeing today is essentially who's got the bigger bag, who's got the most money. And even in our communities, I laugh sometimes because we still talk about our communities, which is not funny. Our communities need more jobs. They need more resources. That's great. But you're not going to hear that our communities need to heal. They need more mental health services. We need to get to the root causes of understanding of who we are and who we've been conditioned to be. We need more love. Going back to what Soul Rack was saying about the exchange with him and his son, I kid you not. And it sounds like a crazy idea. I think about Chicago all the time. That's just one city that's always been on my mind. And I think about how can we infuse love back into these areas? And I think about an exchange of hugs, right? Like, you know how you embrace like a young man, like your son, you give him a hug, and there's an energy exchange that occurs within that. And I think, why can't we go into our communities, do a community talk, and before everybody leaves, they get a hug from another man.
I like that.
And they get this hug that releases them. I know there will be a release of tears. There'll be a release of vulnerable feelings and thoughts that can come from that. So yes, the music right now has been weaponized in the way in which it wants us to continue to ruminate, stay in that cycle, but also it's divisive. So if we battle each other, even within the music, the older heads are better than the newer heads are better than the older heads. It's just divisiveness that's been infused into the business model, capitalism, money, jewelry, shiny things, so to speak, has been what sort of like they dangle in front of us, knowing that a lot of times we just want to feel good. So we've been taught and conditioned that if I have the Bentley, if I have the $250,000 car, I'm better now. I feel good now. But deep down inside, we could still be experiencing the hurt and pain. So we continue to rap about it as well. So it is a need to have discourse around hip hop and discussions around. I don't want to turn on the radio at 9 o'clock in the morning and hear that picking up an AK and taking out ourselves. And this programming, like in a radio station, is okay with doing this. And I have 3 daughters, and I don't want my daughter to hear that without understanding that there's a system behind that that's programming you to be this way. And I think our artists need more discourse. We need to have more conversations that can pull us out of that so we can hear more Common. Common just released a great body of work that nobody's going to get a chance to listen to because we have to dig deep underneath everything else that they've built on top of it. And so I always ask the kids this in my symposiums, like, is it a fault of our artists or is it a fault of the system? And I think there's an opportunity to say that there's rather than fault the artists, what can we do to pull ourselves up out of it? Because if we're expecting the system to do it, it's not going to happen. There's not going to be a change of heart, in my opinion, because money is the root of that system. So if it makes money, they're going to keep promoting it and keep promoting it. So it's going to be up to us to really do it and create our own spaces and lanes. And we need to uplift Common. We need other artists to uplift those socially conscious artists.
Talib, Immortal Technique. Yeah, you're right.
You're right. Put them on the main stage, put them on the platforms. And I think it's a slow go, but we've seen some of that take place, I think. Really slowly.
But do you think it also has to do with the fact that hip hop has grown so much and that a lot of the people who actually are purchasing these albums are really sightseeing through the ghetto and through the hood, and they don't see the consequences of the music. They just want to be down. And they don't feel bad about lying to kick it.
That's absolutely right. I can listen to Rest in Peace Pop Smoke. I can love Pop Smoke in Kansas. I never have to come to Brooklyn. So I never have to live the life that he has to live, or even though, rest in peace, he got killed in LA, out in Cali, but I never have to be in the Bronx. But I could go crazy to the song and I can consume it. And because everybody those red states, they love hip hop just as much as the Northeast or Southeast. They love it just as much. They consume it, they buy it. So because of that, you're absolutely right. It has a lot to do with who's purchasing now. It has a lot to do with the technology, the streaming now. So now I can almost get a sense of what they go through, but you're never gonna fully understand. You don't have to walk down the street in the Bronx where he's actually rapping or they're actually rapping about what they're going through. And you're not speaking out against it. Like, it would be cool if those same consumers were like and utilize their power and their voices. Not saying that they're not, but there's some that are. But collectively, it's not happening, because if that was the case, maybe we would see more things change in the communities in which these artists come from as well.
But it's very seldom that you get very much pushback in a system that is beneficial to you.
No, I think that's what it's. Now we're talking about the why to do something, the why to do something or to not do something. And I think what we have to get our artists to understand is that me and you, SP, I was talking about this critical listening that has to occur. You went into a booth, the studio, and you rapped this and you're promoting this. And at no point in time in an interview did you say, I'm not actually doing this. And I'm not expecting you to, because most artists have a persona but there has to be a balance here. There has to be something that gets the person out of the spiral, because the young kids listen to it. I listen to it, but I'm able at a point where I can pick and choose what I want, and I have a filter that I can utilize. A lot of our young people don't have that because they haven't been taught, or they've been conditioned not to have that. So the level of acceptance that this is reality. And we know that a lot of times it's not the case. So it's like really getting back to the essence of hip hop. And I really love talking about the pillars and the beginnings of the culture and talking about how it has evolved to help people understand how it has changed over times as well.
So when I see something like the tragedy that happened in Houston, and the people who got crushed, and I remember thinking music has so much power, and there would have been so much power in calming the area, you know? And do you think it has gotten to a point where even the artists aren't looking at the fans as humans? They're looking at them as the ends to a mean, the means to an end?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, SP. I was saying in a group, a symposium I did this week, because we talked about the incident that occurred, and I was saying I don't believe the artists fully understand the impact. First of all, the amount of people that was at that festival speaks to some level of influence and impact. It does. To even just get them to come. And I believe most artists, you know, there's a creative element and they want to be creative and they love seeing that energy. But I don't think sometimes, I agree, I don't think sometimes they fully understand the power the influence that they have. That was an opportunity there to the MC is the mic controller. It's the person that has the ability where you say something and people listen. And I don't think, again, some of the newer artists and maybe even some of the artists from our generation, I don't think they understand that power. And that's why it's so important that we need to have a passing of the baton that is intentional. There needs to be a understanding of the pillars of the culture and why it's the foundations of how you got to that stage. The mic, that MC has a great and enormous responsibility. There's people that came before you that built this. If we respect that pillar, then you know that there's more to it than just getting on a stage and saying this. In the meanwhile, this is taking place, and you had the power. And I know, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of, because there's arguments and discourse around what this person could have done. But just get to the essence of the artists. You have a lot of power, and if they understood that, I think that we would see more changes, because we control the system. Think about it. If we decide today we don't want to make that music anymore, that kind of music, even for 1 year, artists going in strategically, intentionally going into creative spaces and giving us socially conscious music, that's going to be the trend. That's going to, if it sells, that's what they're going to have to go, because it's really about the dollar. So once we just understand our full power and capabilities, it's a game changer. And I just think we haven't got there yet. And platforms like Powaful Impact and Mental Hop, those are going to be the avenues, along with so many others, where we start to sort of get people to really embrace the power that they truly have in the space of hip hop, mental health, healing, and changing and impacting our communities in a positive way.
Yeah, I'm glad that you did mention that you know, about the effects of hip hop and how it does impact our community as a whole. I think one of the things that we need to do tonight, and I'm glad you're here because I feel like you are in a position to do that. Because a lot of times we tell ourselves, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. This is normal. We normalize trauma. Mm-hmm. And we think because we grew up that way, that's the way it should be. And we don't realize that we might suffer with a mental illness. We might suffer with a mental disorder because we have normalized it. We have made it seem like it's okay to be that way. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not down talking anybody that struggles with a mental illness. I have a daughter that does. And there may be people that's listening to the podcast that has a mental illness, but they may not be aware that they're struggling with that because sometimes we don't have honest people around us to say, hey, you need to go and see a therapist. You may need to see a psychologist, whatsoever have you. Can you define for us, just so we can help people who may be on that point where they don't really understand what's going on with them? Can you define exactly what a mental health disorder is, or mental illness in general?
Yeah, typically to help people understand it is when you have a mental illness, it impacts you in multiple ways. So first of all, we know that it impacts you internally. You don't feel the same. You don't feel good. You don't feel like yourself. You feel increased levels of stress. You feel depressed. You feel anger. You feel aggression. You feel these emotions internally. But then because you feel these emotions internally and it affects you as a human being, it ultimately affects you externally, which means it affects you in school. It affects your functioning in relationships or on the job or with friends or with family or in your community. So then you see it could be one or the other or both. And what people have to understand is that because that affects your functioning, there's things that are going to be reinforced. I lose my job, breakups, family dysfunctions, community issues, substance abuse, incarceration rates, crime, all these things that can have depression, anxiety, all these things start to happen. So once that it impacts your functioning to that level, we usually diagnose it with something. Like we give you a diagnosis. That's when you're in this space of a mental illness, meaning there's something that is impacting you physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that's where we need to sort of say, similar to how physical disease or illness takes place, you can have a mental illness or disease that also could be resolved and you can heal from. And I think that's a big part of it too, because we normalize it. We don't even think there's anything different. So what happens when you go to therapy and when you go to counseling, one of the beginning things that we do is try to help you with what you said, so Rack, which is the awareness. Awareness is the beginnings of healing. Awareness is like the door to healing. It's like once you acknowledge, wait a minute, there's something different that I could be experiencing. I never knew that. Once you start to get that, or I'm acknowledging and taking accountability that I'm being honest, something's not right. That beginning of vulnerability and awareness is the beginnings of healing. If you think about healing being the long road that you travel, the first entryway to it is awareness. So if we get people just to acknowledge, and that takes time, I'm sure y'all can imagine, there's a lot of denial, rightfully so, because denial is a protective factor. Denial protects us from feeling like we're crazy or something's wrong with us, because these are the labels and stigma that has been placed on our society. So nobody wants to feel like something's wrong with them. So we put up these protective factors: denial, projection. It's your fault. It's not my fault. It's something you're doing, not something I'm doing. So once we help people get through, you can put that wall down with me. Like, this be your true self. Tell me what's going on. Once we could get to that level of trust and safety, then we could allow people to share, and then we could allow acknowledgement and awareness of what they're truly experiencing to go on. Then we can help people heal.
Dr. S, remember the breakdown of denial, the acronym DENIAL? Don't even know I am lying to myself.
Correct.
Denial. Don't even know I'm lying to myself. So just check that out, people. That's denial right there.
Mm-hmm.
So, being of a certain age, when we grew up in homes where what happens in my house stays in my house,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't tell. Uh, where, how do we break that cycle? Because I think those words that we have taught each other over the years, our parents taught us, their parents taught them, has added to the mental strife that we're going through now, because we were taught not to say anything.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You just go, you just keep it moving, because who's going to believe you anyway? So how do you get people to elevate themselves where they are beyond beating the hell out of their kids, and they are beyond don't say anything, when don't leave, whatever happens in this house stays in this house? How do we get past that? Because I think those are some things that are really causing trauma.
Yeah, it's intergenerational trauma. It's being passed down from generation to generation. And so often we get into the space of blaming past generations, or, why didn't you do this, or why didn't you do that? But remember, that's what they were taught. So it's like you're doing what you feel, or what you was done to you, what you thought was right. And I'm glad you mentioned this idea of discipline. I work with young people. It's discipline is not supposed to be traumatic, and it is. And I work in the juvenile justice system, and I had symposiums with young men that are incarcerated. And when I talk about discipline, they lighten up like, yo, I got hit with this, I got hit with that, and they're sitting in jail. And they're trying to make the connection between what did that do to help me? And so one of the things we have to be able to do is, there's a great saying, great quote, if trauma can be passed down from generation, so can healing. And once we get to this understanding that the things that we've been taught and conditioned to do were not necessarily the right things to do, and we could offer in an alternative way that doesn't take away your stance as being a great parent, doesn't take away your stance as being a strong parent, a competent parent. That's being open to the idea that if you have to do something multiple times, like strike your kid, or if you have to tell your kid, don't, what happens in this house stays in this house, then that means you're trying to keep something hidden and buried. And the whole idea of keeping something buried in our house keeps something buried inside of the individual. And if you keep something buried inside of the individual, you are putting that person in your family at risk for something worse that could happen, because there's only a level of time in which somebody can keep burying something. As a volcano is going to begin to be unsettled, and you're going to have this eruption that happens. How do we prevent that? There has to be a safe place that can begin in the home. So first, we could talk about issues and challenges here together collectively. But if you go to school and there's a person there that's giving you an open, safe place to talk, we have to get our parents open enough to trust. And I think that's a problem in itself too. We've been through things in school districts and systems, not even school systems, healthcare systems, community systems, government systems, judicial systems. We don't trust. And because we don't trust, we don't want to tell people what's going on in our families, because we feel that they're going to do something that's going to ultimately break up that family, not knowing by suppressing it, we are essentially doing the same thing. So we have to find a way to, we always talk about breaking the cycle, SP, but I love the idea of just, we only have to put a crack in it. If you think about it, the way healing works is if one person or one exchange or one event or one experience of healing takes place, it has a magnetic possibility to spread, and it cracks, and it puts cracks in that cycle where ultimately it can break. So you hear these sayings, you see these beams where there's this person that's going to be the person that breaks the cycle. And that sounds like a lot of weight to put on an individual, but it's very courageous. It takes courage to do that. You know, it takes a kid coming to me and saying, you know, Dr. S, I know I'm not supposed to tell you these things, but I want to share some things with you. That's a courageous act. They're saying, in spite of potentially what could happen to me, I have to get this out. And no matter what, I'm going to say this. And it's my duty to protect that child, to protect that individual, and let them know, validate their feelings, and understand there's a level of grace that comes. We're not perfect. None of us are perfect. You know, and I'll support you, and I'll walk with you, and I'll hold your hand through this journey. So we need more love, SP. We need more solidarity. We need more empathy, more compassion amongst each other, and more trust and support in safe places. And if we could get that, then we can start to put a crack and dent in that cycle that we've been seeing over the generations.
And I wanted to broach one more topic with you before we slide back into some music, but I really wanted to have, I think it needs to be addressed. People seem to have this notion that when you're sexually assaulted, that you are immediately just going to go to the police and tell the police what happened, and that is what you do, without taking into consideration the impact that something like that has on a person. So I've heard many people debating about women coming out 20 years later, or 15 years later, or 30 years later, and talking about being sexually assaulted. And there seems to be some confusion on why they waited so long. And as someone who had been, I always say, I probably never said it out loud till I was 35. And it happened when I was 18. So can you explain that kind of trauma and why it takes so long for someone to actually say it out loud?
Yes. I don't think, again, we don't talk about trauma enough. We show trauma. We talk about trauma in a way of talking about the act that has taken place. We don't talk enough about the impact of trauma, and not only the impact, how trauma changes the brain. This is, it has to be, this is why the educational piece is so important. When I hear people make comments about this person came out this amount of years later, they don't understand trauma. Trauma changes the wiring, changes your emotional regulation, syntax in your brain. It changes the wiring. So you do not do things the way you used to do things pre the traumatic event. Maybe before the traumatic event, you were talking, you were certainly really expressive. The traumatic event takes place, it changes you. Because it changes you, and because it was traumatic, you want to not relive that traumatic experience again. So the last thing you want to do is talk about it or tell somebody about it or feel safe enough to share something about it, or a fear of judgment, because we have a society that often does that, that says, well, what did you do? Or what could you have done differently? So we automatically put up all these barriers to feeling safe enough to be able to come out if we're at the mental and emotional state to be able to do that, because the trauma has changed us. It has impacted us in a way in which we may not even communicate the same. We may not even share things the way we used to. We may not even be vulnerable anymore. We may not trust anyone again. So the last thing I'm gonna do is tell you this very traumatic, detailed experience that I went through, in fear that you may judge me for it or question me about it. Or also I share with you, and what do? Do you tell another family member? Do you put it on social media? Well, that's not what I told you for. I was going through something, and so it takes a lot of, it takes time to get to that place. And if it always gets me when people say, well, why did they come out now? Because clearly you don't understand, like, you're putting a time frame in which you're ready, or you thought that person should come out and express what they went through. But it takes time for that individual, and they need support, and they need encouragement, and they need, sometimes counseling, and they need that that empowerment, that's to understand you're not alone with this, to be able to do that. And that takes time in order to get to that place.
Thank you for that, because I've been listening to these conversations that are being had, and traditionally, as tradition has shown, doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter what age we're living in when sexual assault occurs. It is normally pushed back on women or the victim. Even with boys, it is pushed back on the young men. Why didn't you fight? But they don't consider the grooming. They don't consider the absolute violence of that, and the shame that comes with it. So I'm glad you addressed it, because it was starting to irritate me, because these are adults that don't understand. And if you don't understand, and you have children and something happens to your children, how safe are they going to feel telling you about it?
Exactly.
So, okay. How do you perform music therapy with the client? So is it done in your office during the session, or do they have hip hop homework?
That's a great question, and I was sharing this with Nev behind the scenes. So originally when I was doing therapy, I'm still in private practice. I don't do I have some individual clients, and when I do some individual stuff, of course, I'm doing, listening to certain music with them, and we're breaking down lyrics, and I'm giving them homework. Maybe they might go back and listen to, because remember, it's about engagement, education, empowerment, and also about healing. So I might send them back to listen to a song, or identify a song that resonates with them around the condition or experience that they're trying to get through, and bring that back to the session. But because I'm doing more education now now I'm going, which I love, I'm going into schools and I'm having these symposiums, which I love the word because it's really like this exchange in this conversation, in this discourse that happens where I'm not solely facilitating, but I'm in the midst of, I'm with our kids and I'm guiding them through this idea of understanding the nuances of mental health and then tying it in and connecting the dots and helping them connect the dots through hip hop. So through these symposiums, it's like questions and enlightenment and talking points. And I'm not driving information down their throats. I'm not saying you got to do this, you got to do that. I'm not even screaming. The tone of my voice is one of which is inviting them to be part of this experience. And I want to learn from you. Bring me into your space, bring me into your world. So the engagement is number one. So it's the level of connection, and the music helps that, obviously, because I get to share some music with them and they share some music with me. Then there's the educational piece, which I usually focus on some level or aspect of mental health, trauma, depression, anxiety, PTSD, anger. But I do other things outside of like our traditional mental health topics. So I'll talk about resilience, empathy, compassion, grace, gratitude, concepts that you just don't hear growing up in schools, and you might not even hear growing up in your home. And then so that's the educational piece, and then the empowerment piece is also always a takeaway. What's going to be a takeaway for that kid or that young person in that symposium? What can they take away that they could apply in a very practical way? Is it because you watched Brenda from Tupac and you saw the trauma she experienced, but you heard an initial line where Tupac says, "Let me explain to you how it affects our whole community." So now you start to understand where you just committed one act that you thought was just something small and minute, but it impacted the entire community because it reverberates throughout the community. It's a wave that happens. Brenda went through this traumatic event. Then she went to this traumatic event. And then she went through that, all because that initial one. So that's just like, it could be something as simple as that. Or it could be something as simple as Nas is a great storyteller. And he created Illmatic at 19. And how did he do it at 19? And I have a story inside of me that I want to tell that I didn't even think was possible at the age of 19. So now I'm inspired by him. So now I can maybe start to journal my ideas and thoughts. That can be therapeutic for me. So whatever the takeaway is for that young person, I always ask, what's the takeaway? Give me one takeaway. And I'm doing this SP, Soul Rack, and that with our most vulnerable populations, the populations that our society has forgotten. You committed a crime or you did something wrong, you're incarcerated, but you're 16. You came from a traumatic household environment. Yes, you have to serve your time. You have to do that time. But this is about, there's no rehabilitation in our judicial system. It's really about stay away, do that, and then come back into the same place. What I get a chance to do is infuse a level of conversation around healing, around mental health, around wellness that hopefully ignites the idea of change internally. So when you get outside, you don't want to do the things that you used to do because now you see yourself as a different individual. And that's always my goal, that's always my goal in any of the mental health work that I do, is how can we grow? How can we continue to evolve and heal throughout this journey?
So when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? I want my legacy to be someone who cared. Not someone who cared, and someone who activated that caring and compassion. And I used to think, like, when I first came into this space, I was like gun ho. I was going to change the world. Like, I took a job at one of the worst juvenile justice facilities in the state of New Jersey. And I got in there. I was young, I was vibrant, and I was like, I'm gonna help every single one of these kids. And I got in there and realized that the system, because now I evolve and I understand systems, the system, they didn't want that from me. Why would they want me to really truly care and really care about these kids? Because recidivism rates go down. Recidivism, meaning the rate of coming back in, goes down. Kids become enlightened. Kids stop seeing their brother as their enemy and shooting each other. Then they put me in the system as a black male. I have to work in that system in which I see young kids being lined up with uniforms on in a count with a person, a CEO that's a different color than them, counting them. That reminds me of slavery from years ago. So now I'm impacted, I'm triggered, and I'm like, you know what? The kids were like, when I told them I was transitioning, I was leaving, they were applauding me. They were like, do it. Go out and tell them this is not the place to be. Tell them that there's people out there that love and care about them. So that's what I want my legacy to be. One in which somebody cared, they loved our people in a very authentic way, and then they did something, even if it changed one life. I feel my legacy was fulfilled, because one life could change so many other lives. And I know, and I feel good, and I feel good about where I'm at. I'm not selling my soul to try to come on and be somebody I'm not. I'm hip hop. I'm bringing hip hop into colleges. I'm an adjunct professor. When I do my classes, this is what I look like. Like when parents come to my office, they'll say, "Yeah, we're looking for Dr. Sconiers." Like, Dr. Sconiers. I'm Dr. Sconiers. Like, I am that person. So I'm being my most authentic self and doing what I love. And if kids and if young people and our people just get that, be yourself, don't lose yourself, understand your greatness, then that in itself is enough for me to be okay with the legacy that I leave as well.
I think it's important that you made the statement, I am hip hop, because many times when we look at hip hop, which is, there's the 4 elements, but we just look at the performance side of it. But hip hop is a culture, which is a way of life. And with that being said, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm going to tell you why. And I know I said it earlier, but I want to reemphasize that, because we don't always have the opportunity to talk to someone who can speak to us from a psychological perspective. There's a lot going on today. We're dealing with coronavirus. We're dealing with hip hop legends that have passed and gone. And some of it, to a certain point has been drug related or have been some other issues, health issues. And so we haven't really been, to a certain extent, I feel like we haven't really been there for some of those artists. And that's just my opinion. But I'm going to bring it back to this. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because just like how you're making an impact in the culture today, as far as your profession, and you're representing hip hop, and you're showing there's a different face to hip hop other than what we have grown to love and grown to know, that there is a mental and psychological component to it. And we need to embrace that, because we need to be able to save our legends or save the ones who are struggling right now by bringing this information to the forefront. But who are the 3 most influential and impactful people in your life, personally and professionally, and why?
Wow, that's a great question, and I agree with you 100%. So, Rack, I think that we also talk about these pillars, but we don't talk enough about the extensions. There's other pillars as well that often they get missed sometimes, which is this knowledge, which is this health, which is this mental health. I love what Styles P is doing in terms of talking about in terms of juicing and your physical health.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's a beautiful thing. I'm going to tell you, the most influential people in my life have truly been, personally, have been my parents. I grew up with my mother and father in the household, and my dad. They're both in their 70s, and my dad he was that quiet man that worked and went to work every day, but I saw him be present, and I saw him display vulnerability. I saw him communicating with my mom. I saw him expressing his feelings, but I also saw my mom that went to work every day, who supported my dad, who, encouraged him. So it gave me like this idea that this was something that was not only possible, but I was living it, and I was enjoying it, and I was experiencing it. So my mom was a poet. She would just get on the phone and just call somebody and just encourage them. She would write handwritten notes to people, and just fold it up and tuck it in their shirt. And I would find some things that she wrote, and I feel like, wow, that's where I got this poetry from. That's where I got this creativity from, because her writings they were amazing. And then my dad, that's where I got this quiet strength from, that you could be both. Like, you could be strong and be emotionally in tune as well. So those are my influences personally. But then professionally, like, I was telling Nev, like, I was always into like finances and entrepreneurship and things like that. But it was really like, honestly, it was like the teachings of like Malcolm X that really really got me to understand, like, I love my people. Like, I really love out my community, and I wanted to be part of the reason why there was an awakening of or the enlightening of such, not a judgment, a condemning. And that's what Malcolm did so well. Like, he loved the people, but he wasn't bringing them down. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the fact that we feel like in order to bring somebody up, we have to break them down again. No, you can love somebody up. And that's why, so those are just like some people right off the top. But then hip hop, so many things, and artists too. Like, I know SP was talking about Jay and Nas, and I was talking about KRS-One.
Oh,
KRS-One, the teacher was, she asked me what song, and I said Criminal Minded, and somebody like, you fell in love with hip hop through Criminal, an album called Criminal Minded. Yes, because I never heard hip hop put in that way, and then be seeing his evolution. So of course the verses that took place, I was all in, because that was he was the ones that I started to understand, whether it be metaphysics, I started to understand energy, whether I started to understand that level of consciousness. So those are just some artists, and there's so many, that just hip hop in general, like, has been one of my biggest inspirations. Just the culture itself and the creative elements to it has inspired who I am today.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course. Thank you.
So, is there anything you're currently working on that'll be coming out soon? Anything you want to promote?
Yeah, like I was telling you guys earlier, I got a couple of great contracts for mental health that I'm so proud of. The contracts with the juvenile justice system that I got, the first one in March. These are state contracts with the entire state. And then I got my second one just 2 weeks ago, and just finalized it, had a meeting with the state again just this week. So I'm extremely happy about that. And the reason, because if I can do it in New Jersey, then that means I can begin to reach out to these same bodies and systems in other states, and I could reach more kids and more of our youth in that way. So I'm excited about more partnerships, more schools, traveling more to talk more about mental health and talk about it as an approach that other people can use, because I'm not, I'm a creative in that way where I want to share it. You know, what does it do for me to have something that I believe could be beneficial, but I don't share it and allow others to be able to pull gems and nuggets from it in which they can utilize in their spaces to help people. So so mental health, just continuing to grow it, you know, and like I said, I have the I've been blessed to be part of a movie that's called Hush, coming out summer 2022. A independent director named Antoine Lindsay, who I'm telling you, as a creative, you know, seeing and hearing what he's doing with this film and then being part of it, the colors, the layers, and it's called Hush, Help Us Say Help. It's one of those films that I believe is going to be a groundbreaking experience because we don't get a chance to see mental health, wellness, and healing done in a very artistic way, where it's not like talking about the pain and suffering all the time. We see a lot of those films, the trauma, the tragedy, but this film focuses on validating that, but now saying, but there's an opportunity to heal as well. So so that's what I'm looking on. I have another book in the pipeline. I did Good Mornings, Wake Up Calls for Life, which was my first book.
Show them your book. Show them your book so they can get it.
So Good Mornings, Wake Up Calls for Life, available on Amazon. You know, available on Amazon. And this is one of 3. So there's Good Mornings, Good Afternoons, and there's going to be Good Nights. And every single book is designed to give you that burst of encouragement, of the burst of positive energy at different points of the day. So the second book is basically done. I'm just waiting to release it in 2022. I'll follow up with Good Afternoons. So those are some things that I'm working on, and just like doing more.
To show them good vibes.
Good vibes, yeah, good vibes.
Good vibes
that came
too.
out in 2020. I got to show people that because we always give you some good vibes, some love, some good energy, some knowledge, some education as well. So I want people to get that also involved, also on Amazon as well. So when you click on either one, you'll get a chance to see the other one as well. So you can purchase them together.
And the links will be in the description.
Yep. And I want people to go to mentalhop.com if they want merch, got hoodies, hats, and of course, you know, they can follow me on drrandysconiers.com. So it's the full word, Dr. Speaks, the full word, Sconiers, my last name.com. And I'm sure you guys will put that in the tag and
absolutely.
And links with them. So that way they can book me for community talks, mental health symposiums, traveling to colleges and universities. I do stuff like that as well. So I'm looking forward to just connecting with the people more, like staying with the roots of social work, which is outreach, community, connecting. So that's what I plan on doing more of in 2022.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I think the next few months will be about mental health, physical health, spiritual. Your mind, body, and spirit all needs to be whole, because you can't come to anybody as half a person. Nobody, you don't have 2 halves make a whole. You need to be a whole person in order to find a whole person. So I'm glad that you're here, and I hope you come again, especially to promote your film, and especially because our community needs a reset. And I think with people like you, we're well on our way. So thank you so much for being here.
And I also want to thank you as well. Very deep conversation, much needed conversation, and a conversation that needs to be shared with the hip hop community, because we do need to address mental illness more so. Again, we can never thank you enough for the contribution you're doing for the culture. We can never thank you enough for the things that you're doing right now. And we appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Powaful Impact podcast with Sorak, Neb, and SP, featuring Dr. Rennie, and forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, Sconiers. Also, Dr. S. Thank you, Neil, for helping me on that. And we ask that you buy his books, his merchandise. I believe what you have on tonight is one of your hoodies, if I'm wrong, correct me.
Nah. This is
okay, no problem.
It's not one of my hoodies, but it's a dope hoodie in itself.
Okay.
But I got the hoodies online. I definitely want people to tap in. And when by the time this comes out, there's gonna be more hoodies, more merch. So they're gonna have more choice and selection as well. So definitely go to mentalhot.com. And I know you guys gonna post all the links, so it makes it easy for people to get to. So
absolutely. So I want to encourage you to buy the merchandise, buy the books. Connect with this brother right here, because he's on the cutting edge of the culture. And not only is he on the cutting edge of the culture, he can also help you take you off the ledge. And we need people like that. We're thankful for what he does for the community. We ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay connected to upcoming episodes and follow us on social media. Remember, Powaful Impact is more than music. It's a way of life. And as Nev say, what's the word we say, Nev, whenever we end it? Boom! All right. Boom. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you again, Dr. S, for being on the show tonight.
Thank you guys as well. Thank you, SP. Thank you, Nev.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Yo, we getting that record 2022 summer.
Final.
A&B side.
No doubt. No doubt. We got to get it.
Maybe. It's a boom.
Definitely.
Thank you again.
Thank
you for staying for the amount of time you did. I appreciate you doing that.
To my peeps, may God bless you and keep, make his face shine upon you and grant you peace beyond anything man could hand you. Shalom, the wholeness, the fullness, calm when the waters of this world form a bullwhip. Safeguard over your ark till the storm comes to an end. Depart in unison, singing Amen, Amen.